There comes a moment in everyone's life where you realize you've been talking, but not really speaking. You've been present in the room, but not really present in yourself. You give opinions in a quieter tone. You trim your words down so they don't take up too much space. You soften your truths so no one feels uncomfortable, even if that means you're uncomfortable. And over time, you become a background version of yourself because shrinking becomes easier than standing tall. But here's the tough truth: every time you shrink, you teach people that your comfort can be sacrificed. Every time you make your voice small, you train the world to meet you with small respect. Speaking up without shrinking doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean raising your voice, overpowering someone, or demanding attention like the loudest person in the room. It means matching your presence to your worth. It means saying what you need, what you think, and what you feel without squeezing yourself into a smaller version just to keep the peace. Peace that costs you yourself isn't peace, it's quiet self-erasure. And the world will gladly accept the quiet version of you if that's the only version you offer. Speaking up begins internally long before it becomes external. The moment you allow yourself to believe that what you think matters, the moment you realize that your needs aren't inconveniences, the moment you understand that your voice deserves air just as much as anyone else's, that's when things shift. Your tone steadies. Your body language aligns. Your words stop trembling. You don't speak to be loud, you speak to be clear. And clarity carries a power volume never will. Most people don't shrink because they're weak. They shrink because at some point in their life, shrinking was safer. Maybe you were taught to avoid conflict. Maybe you grew up around people who ignored your voice. Maybe you were punished for speaking truth. Maybe silence felt easier than the emotional fallout of honesty. But shrinking is a habit, not a destiny. And habits can be trained out the same way they were trained: in repetition, awareness, and courage in small doses. Speaking up without shrinking means you stop apologizing before you even say the thing. It means your voice doesn't come with disclaimers. It means you stop watering your words down so they taste better to someone else. You speak in a tone that matches the seriousness of your point, not the fear of their reaction. You stop asking for permission to exist in conversations that require your presence. You start using phrases like, "Here's what I think. This is what I need. I disagree. And here's why." They're simple, but they carry spine. Your spine. The truth is, when you shrink, people don't admire your humility, they assume your uncertainty. When you fade your voice, people don't think you're being polite, they assume you have nothing important to add. People judge your value by how you value yourself. The world mirrors your tone. When you communicate like someone who's unsure, you're treated like someone who doesn't matter. When you speak with calm conviction, not anger, not ego, just steady self-respect, people adjust. They listen differently. They respond differently. Not because they suddenly respect you, but because you finally respected yourself. There's also a moment of fear every time you speak up. The fear of being judged, measured, misunderstood, or dismissed. That fear doesn't disappear. You speak through it. Shrinking doesn't eliminate fear, it just gives it control. Speaking up, even with shaking hands, is how you take that control back. Confidence grows in the aftermath of choosing honesty over comfort. When you speak up without shrinking, you also give permission to others who have been living in their shadows. Your calm boldness opens doors for people who've never seen what healthy assertion looks like. You show them that strength doesn't have to be loud. Truth doesn't have to be rude. Boundaries don't have to be battles. And your presence doesn't have to be apologized for. Your voice carries weight, but only when you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's comfort. Speaking up without shrinking is not about dominating the room, it's about refusing to disappear in it. It's choosing truth over fear. It's choosing authenticity over approval. It's choosing yourself, finally, fully unapologetically. Just remember, you don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to stop whispering your life away. Your voice has value, but only if you use it without apologizing for existing. Most people don't realize how often they apologize before they even speak. Not with words like sorry, but with their tone, their posture, their hesitations. They lower their volume, shorten their sentences, soften their opinions, and shrink their presence as if simply taking up space requires justification. The world conditions many of us to be small before we ever learn how to stand tall. We learn to second-guess ourselves in conversations, to overthink how our words might land, and to prioritize everyone's comfort over our own truth. But the moment you start treating your voice like something fragile, the world starts treating it like something optional. And nothing about your existence is optional. Your voice becomes powerful the minute you stop packaging it in fear. You don't need to apologize for having thoughts. You don't need to apologize for having needs. You don't need to apologize for wanting to be heard. Yet so many people speak like they're intruding in their own lives, as if their perspective is a burden someone else is doing them a favor by listening to. That mindset doesn't start externally, it starts internally, in the subtle ways you talk yourself out of expressing what matters. You rehearse your words too much. You soften them too much. You hide behind vague phrases hoping people will get the hint. But hints aren't communication. Softness isn't clarity. And fear isn't respect. You don't owe the world a quieter version of yourself. You don't have to dilute your thoughts so they go down easier. People with strong voices aren't fearless. They're just tired of living in the shadow of their own doubt. They choose expression over compression. They choose clarity over discomfort. They choose presence over disappearance. And here's the truth: you can be respectful without erasing yourself. You can be thoughtful without shrinking. You can be gentle without being invisible. Your voice isn't meant to be a whisper inside a storm of other people's expectations. It's meant to be steady, grounded, rooted in your sense of self-worth. When you apologize for existing, you train people to expect less from you. They assume you don't have much to say because you communicate like someone who doubts themselves. They assume your needs are negotiable because you present them like requests instead of realities. But when you speak with intention, when you hold your tone with calm certainty, when you stop cushioning every truth with needless softness, people shift, they lean in, they listen. Not because you're louder, not because you're forceful, but because you communicate like someone who understands their own value. Your voice is more than sound, it's identity, it's boundary, it's self-respect made audible. It shapes the way the world interacts with you and the way you interact with yourself. When you silence your own voice to maintain harmony, you create internal chaos. You trade authenticity for approval. You trade truth for comfort. And that trade always costs you more than you think. Because the longer you stay silent, the harder it becomes to remember what your own voice even sounds like. You begin to forget the power you once had because you haven't used it in so long. Using your voice unapologetically doesn't mean being rude. It doesn't mean steamrolling over others or demanding attention like it's a prize. It simply means you stop asking for permission to be who you are. It means you understand that your opinions matter, your feelings matter, your boundaries matter, and your presence matters. It means you stop prefacing every statement with disclaimers that weaken your message. You replace, "I might be wrong, but," with "here's what I think." You replace, "this is probably stupid, but," with "here's my idea." You replace, "it's okay if we don't, but I kind of want," with "this is what I prefer." You speak like someone whose voice deserves the space it fills. Your voice has value, not because others validate it, but because it comes from you. You are allowed to express yourself without shrinking. You are allowed to take up emotional, mental, and conversational space. You are not an interruption. You are not a distraction. You are not a guest in your own life. Speak with the steady confidence of someone who understands that existence alone is enough reason to be heard. Your voice was never the problem. Apologizing for it was. Confidence is not volume, it's clarity. Saying what you mean without shrinking to make others comfortable. Too many people confuse confidence with loudness, thinking the person who speaks the most or the strongest must be the one who's sure of themselves. But real confidence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, it's about being the clearest. It's about communicating in a way that leaves no doubt about your intention, your boundaries, or your truth. When you speak with clarity, you don't need to raise your volume, because your words carry weight on their own. They don't compete for attention, they command it naturally. Loudness demands energy from others. Clarity earns respect. Shrinking your words to make other people comfortable is one of the most common ways people lose their own power without even noticing. You may soften your sentences, add unnecessary apologies, or wrap your message in caution because you don't want to upset someone or seem too assertive. You might minimize your needs, cushion your discomfort,